Hello, my name is Lewis and I am the vlogger for the Critical Pedagogue. Now, I am a senior lecturer in a university just outside of North London, and I'm a senior lecturer in educational studies, and I've become really interested in what it means to be a critical pedagogue and what critical pedagogy is. And my hope is that in these videos we'll be able to explore some of the key elements of critical pedagogy, what it does, how it works, and what we can do with it in order to change the way education works for the greater good of society, both within the United Kingdom and elsewhere. Because the factors that influence education, whether in England or in Europe or in America or wherever around the world, there are factors which are similar which make the education system what it is at the moment. So what is critical pedagogy? Well, critical pedagogy is a way of theorising and thinking about in practice educational systems and focusing that thinking and that practice towards a concept of freedom and a struggle against oppressive and alienating cultures and ideologies. So critical pedagogy is a theoretical critique of educational systems that oppress, and it's a way of developing educators' philosophical and moral bases for their pedagogy. So their way of teaching, what they see education for, how they try to enfranchise their learners into an educational system. And the hope is that critical pedagogy, in thinking about oppressive systems within education and thinking about one's own way of teaching, one's way of being in education, will enable individuals who are oppressed by a system and alienated by certain practices within those systems to have and gain a position of freedom. So, there are some key thinkers in critical pedagogy. Some of you might know them. There are three which I'm going to pick out now, but there are others who write about critical pedagogy too. So the first is Paulo Freire. He was originally writing in Brazil. He educated people who lived in slums and taught them language through reading literature, and then educated them and facilitated their learning in order to support those people who lived in slums to gain, hopefully, what will become a new social reality, which is one of the key things that critical pedagogy tries to do. So if you move people from oppression towards a struggle for freedom, well then that's creating a new social reality. We have Henry Giroux as the second person who followed in Freire's footsteps. He's a really significant writer at the moment. He's still writing. There's a really excellent book called On Critical Pedagogy in which he talks about the role of education, the way it demonises youth, the way teachers are being stopped from being public intellectuals, and the way higher education is alienating people out of learning and education. And Zygmunt Bauman follows these people as well. So why is critical pedagogy so important? Why do I think it's important? Why should you watch these videos and become part of this online discussion about education? Well, let's take an example. There are lots of things done to students in higher education. One of them, particularly in this country, is that students have to pay fees for their education. Now we might think, okay, it's fine, learners and people who want an experience or want to gain knowledge should pay for it. Well, that's a capitalist view, and that's something that we can debate as we go through. But the effect of fees is quite oppressing. When I was studying my undergraduate degree, at one point I had 3 jobs so I could make it through. And I know that this isn't an odd example. Now, in having fees, and for those people who have to pay, or those people who have to work in order to study, well, when the focus becomes on the finance, in fact, it's not possible or nearly impossible to have a flourishing existence within the university. You can't take part in the extra research activities. It's difficult to focus on the value of the degree greater than an economic value at the end of the degree, although many higher education philosophers and thinkers and educational studies theorists would argue that there is much more importance in studying for the value of it than just its economic gain at the end. But even then, we come to know that actually there is something wrong with this argument about the economic value, because now the government, in the UK at least, has said that if you have student debt, it will now count against a mortgage creation for you. So that means then that you having to pay fees for an educational experience which should bring you more money or should enable you to live a flourishing life, if we go there, but then once you get that job after your degree, it's now difficult for you to get a mortgage to live in your own home. And then that means you have to rent a house or a flat, which then means it's very difficult for you to save money in order to buy a house or whatever mode of living you wish to live in. And then, further on from that, the government demonises people who don't live in their own home, and they're seen to not work hard enough. And so, throughout all these three elements of this example, within the university of having to pay fees, after university of having to buy a house or wanting to buy a house, and then after that being demonised by certain authorities, we see three states of oppression where people cannot live a flourishing life away from oppression and alienation. And what we then come to see, in even further contrast, if we look at another country, for example in Finland, where students don't pay fees at all, education is seen as a fundamental human right. And the only small fee you pay as a student is to the students' union, in which you get reduced meal costs, you get free healthcare, or you get reduced healthcare, I should say, and you get other social care and support out of that small payment to your students' union. So we can see two very different ideas of education, of oppression and freedom emerging. And critical pedagogy essentially provides us with a methodology for critiquing educational systems and critiquing particular elements within educational systems, and then provides us, learners, tutors, academics, teachers, parents maybe, as a way of reflecting on that educational experience and developing a critical reflection, being able to see the system from multiple viewpoints and developing a critically informed reflection known as praxis, which can enable change to happen. And if the hope is that that change will lead to new social realities, as we've seen from the view of tuition fees in one country, maybe the hope would be, and the struggle should be, for a higher education system funded in the way that it is in Finland. So my hope is that within this blog, within the videos and the comments and the Twitters, the Twitter sphere, hopefully we can have a discussion about what education could be for, how we can educate towards new social realities, how we can develop a philosophical and moral basis for being a learner, being a tutor, being a higher education administrator, or being an administrator in any educational system, any part of it at least. And I really look forward to engaging with your comments and to develop my understanding of critical pedagogy from you. I look forward to the new critical experience that we're about to gain. Thanks very much, and next video will be up soon. Bye!